and welcome to Enquire to Choir. My name is Eva and I'm here to help you, fellow choir people. So you have a situation. Your choir is singing a song and they keep getting out of tempo, whether that is rushing or slowing down at certain moments or throughout the whole piece. You want to fix that, so you say stay in tempo. That works for maybe 5 minutes or for that particular rehearsal. But the next time, the tempo issue appears again. So you think they just forgot the instruction. And you say again, stay in tempo. Come on, tempo, tempo. They gain tempo. They get back into the right tempo. But the next rehearsal, the tempo again becomes an issue. You think that maybe they're not receptive of you or respectful to your instruction, or they don't just care enough about the fact they're losing or gaining too much tempo. So you say, how many times do I have to say, stay in tempo? You're losing tempo here. Have you ever been in the shoes of your choir singers? Have you ever been in a situation where somebody is telling you, stay in tempo? Well, if you have, you probably realize that just hearing stay in tempo doesn't seem to work, because the person who is out of tempo is not gaining or losing tempo, so to speak, intentionally. And probably that's because not being in tempo is a repercussion of something other than tempo. When it comes to choirs, the problem of being in tempo is actually a bigger problem to solve, because you're not just working with an individual, you're working with a group. So in this video, I will try to talk about tempo in a different manner than you've probably heard before to maybe tackle those problems. Thank you for being here, and let's start with the video, how to stay in tempo as a choir. Tempo. Have you ever wondered what fast is to someone? I keep repeating this on this channel, but people are very different and your choir singers are individually very different. When we're talking about tempo as an individual, it's about perception and the relativity of that term. A fast tempo to me is maybe not the same fast tempo to you. And yes, you can argue, well, a choir has a conductor, but it is a great myth that a choir conductor can keep his or her choir in tempo. He or she can, but when a choir is in it and is having issues with tempo, that is very hard to manage during the performance just by conducting. You can signal that something is wrong, but to actually move a whole group of people into the right direction, that is particularly hard. When I say tempo and the issue of tempo, you're probably thinking of not being in the right tempo, meaning losing tempo or losing speed. But losing speed and losing tempo and the lack of tempo is not the only problem with tempo. A choir rushing is often a problem. Also, not being in tempo in general, meaning not staying in the same beat, not staying in the same energy, or just something is off with the tempo and you can't figure out what. Is it too slow? Is it too fast? Is it too wrong? When you think as an individual performer, I mean, this has been an issue for years. The metronome was invented for a reason, and everyone who ever had to tackle the metronome knows that it's the worst enemy and the best friend. We are not designed to be a machine. So while a metronome is a great device, we could never replicate the way it's doing tempo within us. Tempo and staying in tempo can mean very different things during a particular song, and you will never stay at the exact same beat all the time, and that is not the point of this video. The point of this video is to maybe shift your perspective a little bit, to realize that not being in tempo is a result of something else. The perception of time in general is very different. You have people who are always late, right? in real life, in social life, people often say that they're always late because they're disorganized or disrespectful. I am really punctual, but I have friends who are really late all the time. And I realize that it's just their trait. It's just something within them that makes them feel time differently. That is probably the same with your choir. From an individual singer point of view, they think they're in tempo and they don't realize they're not in tempo for two reasons. First of all, their perception of tempo is different. And the second most important thing, the cumulative effect of all the individual tempos result in a choir tempo. And you as a choir director, choir conductor in front of them can hear whether they're in tempo or not. But they, from their individual point of view, they don't have the right grasp of it. And maybe when they hear you say, stay in tempo, they think, what are you talking about? I'm in tempo. For example, you can try this exercise. Tell your choir to count in themselves 10 seconds. Seconds, not to 10, but 10 seconds. Just to figure out what their perception of 1 second is. Tell them to count in themselves until they get to the 10 seconds. And when they get to 10, they say it out loud. Don't look at the clock, don't look at the watch, don't look at the phone. Try to count 10 seconds. Will you get your choir to shout out 10 seconds at the exact same time? No, I think you will be astonished by how different time flies for everyone. You're lucky if they're even close. So let's talk about the truths I mentioned. The first truth is about the cumulative effect of slowing down a bit as a choir. When you slow down a bit as an individual performer, I will use my example, being a pianist myself. So if I'm a bit slow at a certain point, I can fix it, no problem. And if the number of bars in the score where I was slow or number of notes where I was slow in the piece is small enough, it could go unnoticed. When I do that as a choir singer, I'm maybe slightly, just a teeny tiny bit slow at a certain point. You would think that that would go unnoticed, but my singing affects the singing of other people, intentionally or unintentionally. It affects singers around me. So my individual lack of tempo could affect people around me, and people around me can affect the whole choir. The cumulative effect of losing tempo, so to speak, also has an effect when you're not in a slower tempo or you're not particularly slower, but you keep being a little bit late for every note or every third note or every second bar. And when that accumulates, it becomes a problem, an audible problem. You could hear it really well. Especially because the chances are that you're not the only individual singer that is singing a little bit out of tempo in the choir. So if I slow down a bit at one point, another singer slows down in another point, the cumulative effect could be being out of tempo. The second truth is about catching up when it comes to tempo. I will give you an example. You're in a race. You're competing against one other runner. So there are two of you. You start the race and he is faster than you and is currently leading. You, to become first in the race, you have to gain speed to catch up with him or her. But if you want to be the first, you have to gain extra speed to come in front of him. When we are losing tempo while performing, when we become aware that we are losing tempo, we tend to speed things up and start rushing because we in nature have it our way that we have to equate the amount of tempo lost with the amount of tempo we gain, so it becomes equal. But in music, it doesn't work like that. To go back in tempo after you were slowing down, you just have to get into the tempo. You mustn't go into even a faster tempo than you were supposed to be in. So slowing in tempo, slowing down in tempo, and then gaining the right tempo is what we want to have, and not slowing down in tempo and then rushing in tempo because we think that that would make the tempo correct in general. So our perceptions of what catching up with tempo is in music and Enquire music is a different thing than in real life. This may seem like a silly little story, but if you're working with amateur choirs and non-professional choirs, you have people who maybe and possibly do not have enough experience to realize that the music tempo and music speed and tackling that issue is not the same as it is in a race. The third truth is the fact that being out of tempo could be a psychological thing. You maybe have an individual who keeps being in front of everyone when it comes to tempo, a little bit faster than everybody else, or a little bit slower. It works either way. And you think probably that this person doesn't have a great understanding of tempo. That could be true, but what could also be true is maybe they just want to be in the center of attention, meaning if they're a little bit faster or a little bit slower than everybody else, then they're noticed. Maybe they're so eager to perform well that they have a personal desire to show you and the audience that they know their stuff. So they become a little bit in front of everybody. That doesn't have to be an egotistical thing. It doesn't have to be an ego thing. It could just be a certain kind of a desire to show that they know what they're doing. They made the effort and they know it. Or perhaps, and this is where relativity comes into play, maybe the whole voice part in which that individual is slow, and that slow tempo, slower than it should be, it's not coming across to you as the choir director, not yet. But that individual person feels like the group has to be led by his or her singing a little bit faster because they're afraid that his or her voice group will slow down the tempo. So they start to rush a bit. To you and to the whole choir, it seems that this individual is out of tempo while the other choir singers in his part or her part are not. The truth that I'm talking about in this case is the fact that maybe that individual was in the right tempo. But if the whole rest of the group is slowing down, the group will win. That is something to think about. Okay, so now let's talk about possible reasons why your choir is not in tempo. Bear in mind, maybe some of these reasons are going to seem a bit simple and easy when I define them, but when I start explaining them, I hope you realize that it's not such a small and insignificant issue. The first reason could be maybe they don't know the score really well. Even if they sang it a million times, maybe they're still not sure enough. They don't feel secure enough in that score. I think this is very common actually, because sometimes you learn a choir piece, sometimes you learn a music piece in general, and you can play it, you can perform it, but there are certain moments in that score where you feel really challenged and really tentative and really careful. When you start being extra careful or extra sensitive, the first thing that will go is tempo. How to solve this issue? Come back to the score, slow down the tempo, really slow down the tempo, and start from the end. Start repeating from the end. The last page, second to the last page, third to the last page, whatever that's called. So go from the back to the beginning, because we tend to go through our choir pieces in general always from the beginning to the end. And it could turn out that some of the places in the score are so not learned that they affect the tempo. So go back to basics, go back to the score, and try to figure out what could be the problem, and look at that particular place where they are losing tempo or gaining tempo. Losing tempo is often a sign of a struggle, and gaining tempo is often a mechanism how to avoid tackling a certain issue, or just not having enough attention for that issue, so they want to rush through it, just that becomes unnoticed. So the problem really could be that your choir doesn't know the score really well or well enough to be in the right tempo throughout the whole piece. The second reason is something that I had to tackle at yesterday's rehearsal, and that is they don't have the stamina. What does it mean not to have stamina when it comes to singing? Maybe they're singing a huge score and a long piece. It doesn't even have to be a long piece. It could be a short piece, but to your choir is something that is very challenging and very difficult technically when it comes to their singing stamina. For example, my choir is now singing an 11-page, really difficult arrangement, and the further you get in the score, it becomes really more difficult. The range of the singing is really, really challenging, and you have to get louder and louder. When you have to get louder, when you have to get more powerful, and you're on the 10th page of the score, maybe you really don't have the stamina to push through and to give the extra effort to stay in tempo. How to solve this? Do as many run-throughs as you can. Do vocal technique. A video on it is coming next on this channel, I promise. FYI, do a lot of run-throughs and try to figure out how can you help them. And again, I would advise that you go from the end to the beginning. Try to figure out where the most difficult parts are and how to actually help them. Especially if you're dealing with a score that becomes louder and louder and more powerful at the end, and it's a big gradation of sound. It's really easy to gain a lot of power when you're in perfect shape and at the beginning of the score. But to have a big effect towards the end of the score, you have to push extra. So that is something to think about, and that is something you have to tell them when you're running through the whole piece. Try to explain to them that to stay in tempo when they're tired is very different than staying in tempo when they are not tired. They just have to push a bit extra. Their perception of what fast is different when they're tired and when they're not tired. So it's about the energy as well. Possible reason number 3, they don't have the right view on it or perception of the music score. I will give you an example. Here on the screen, I hope you will be able to see the beginning of the Croatian national anthem. It's called Hrvatska domovina. It was written in the 19th century by a soldier when it comes to music. You can see that it starts like this. Lijepa naša domovino. This is something that is very, very difficult to stay in tempo because the first 3 notes are taken too seriously. And it becomes a bit stale and it doesn't sound like a national anthem. What I keep telling to my choir is that while it's a national anthem and it's very ceremonious and very powerful and it's supposed to be very meaningful, the meaningful part shouldn't get into the fact that it's still a march. It's something you should be able to walk to. So the perception of it changed. The description of every song is really something you have to take into consideration. Try to explain it to your choir. My choir could be thinking, I have to sing this very slowly, with a lot of sound. And what they actually have to do is to gain a sense of moving. Not a fast movement, but still movement. Possible reason number 4, they don't have the right punctuation. What I mean by that, you have complicated rhythms, you have certain rhythmic patterns, and they have a wrong punctuation about them. For example, Singing in the Rain. I hope you can see on the screen a score of it. So the melody goes, I'm singing in the rain, just singing in the rain. They have a big jump from the lowest tone to the highest immediately. I'm sing. They find it really difficult. So they punctuate the first note. I'm sing. And when you keep doing that repeatedly, it becomes really slowing down because the punctuation and the meter is wrong. I'm singing in the rain. Just singing in the rain is very different and is the correct answer to the punctuation question. So when you switch the punctuation, it tends to really mess up with the tempo. Maybe your choir doesn't have the real grasp of a certain rhythmic patterns and how to tackle them. And maybe that's the reason why the tempo is too slow or too fast. How to solve this problem in this particular case? Don't sing the whole melody. Try singing like this. I'm sing, just sing. what a glow. I'm happy. Sing it through like that and then try the original. The whole perception of it will change and the punctuation thing becomes much easier. Therefore, the tempo becomes more correct, so to say. Possible reason number 5. They feel it wrong. And when I say feel, I really mean feel. The song is Ain't No Mountain High Enough, and my soprano seconds have the lead at a certain point with the text, if you need me, call me, no matter where you are, no matter how far. And they tend to sing it like this. If you need me, call me, no matter where you are, no matter how far. That is possibly in tempo, but it sounds like it's not in tempo. If you need me, call me, no matter where you are, no matter how far. That is the tempo, but the right amount of tempo, because they have to start to feel it a bit more energetically. So often it's not about the tempo, it's about the effect the tempo is supposed to have. The lack of energy could present itself like a lack of tempo, but the tempo is actually correct, but everything just sounds stale. How to solve that issue? Remove the scores from their hands and make them just sing. That could eliminate the whole counting of the bars and the beats and stuff. Possible reason number 6, they're working too hard. That seems to be a silly one, but that is often the reason why something is not working when it comes to tempo. They're working too hard. For example, if they're singing really high notes, they put the extra effort and they try to make up for the fact that they're having a really hard time and they work extra hard. And when you're working extra hard, even if I'm just saying the words extra hard in that way, I'm losing tempo while talking to you. There are a lot of things that they have to work on, but at especially difficult places, they tend to work a bit too hard and they neglect the fact that maybe those moments in the score are not still that difficult to them because they have been working on them probably for a long time. So try to tell them, work a bit less hard. Just try to figure out whether that works tempo-wise. This is the most fun for me. Possible reason number 7. They're taking rests too seriously. And the same example, singing in the rain. I'm singing in the rain. There is a rest here. Just singing in the rain, rest. Or a breath. What a glorious feeling, I'm happy again. Rest. I'm laughing at clouds. And what happens? Those rests are written and they should be sung or unsung. But if you think of them as rests, it just becomes a bit too slow. When you just think of them as a bit of a break between all the notes, then it becomes a different thing. So I'm singing in the rain, just singing in the rain. What a glorious feeling. Maybe they take the rests, the pauses a bit too seriously when they're dealing with a more complicated melody. Oh, they're working with a long breath and they come to the rest and they realize, okay, I can rest now. And they have gone bye-bye with the tempo. Repetition is affecting their concentration. Hear me out, I think this is a really common one. Our brains get bored really easily. When you have to do something, especially in music, for the 3rd time, whether it's singing, whether it's listening to the same motif 3 times, it tends to just get bored without even noticing it anymore. When you have to repeat something 3 times, 2 things can happen. You could get bored and you can lose tempo. Or you just really don't care. Your brain doesn't really care anymore because it thinks, oh, I've got this. I've sung through this twice. I can do it for the 3rd time. And then either it gets too fast or too slow because your lack of concentration became really effective. If you have, for example, 3 verse, you have to change something about them for the listener as well to find them interesting, but for your singers as well. The most dangerous time to repeat something is the second time. If you are repeating something 3 times, the second time is the worst when it comes to tempo. That's from my experience. Maybe yours is different. The first time is the first time. The second time is, oh, I've got this, I've done it before, or they're just waiting for the third verse, which tends to have the ending. So the middle one just becomes less important. It also becomes an issue when you have to repeat something a lot of the times. I will use staying alive. You have ha, 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 staying alive, staying alive. That note pause, note pause, note pause, note pause. If you think of the rests as a pause or a very important lack of singing, it becomes too slow. Ha, 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 ha. Or if you tend to just go through with it because you think, oh, it's the same. Ha, 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 staying alive, ha, 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 staying alive. Or you don't have the stamina, so you lose your breath and your energy, and you tend to overrush it or overslow it. So that is a great example. Ha, 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 staying alive, staying alive. Your perception of time has to be very accurate. Possible reason number 9, they're not pronunciating well. What does it mean to pronunciate well? Singing words is not the same as speaking them. So when I say they're not pronunciating well, that could possibly mean they're pronunciating too much. Sometimes you can pronunciate a bit less to get the right tempo and for everything to be understood. I'll talk about pronunciation in an upcoming video, I promise, but for now, I want to just let you know that everything has to be understood, but if a certain word is a problem, you can pronunciate it a little bit less to stay in tempo, and the meaning will not be lost. If you do it for one note, one word, which everybody knows, especially in texts that are really well known, the audience will not notice. How to work on this? By trying it out without the melody. So in this case would be, I'm singing in the rain, just singing in the rain, what a glow, so you're doing the piece without actually singing it, without the melody, but you say in meter, tempo, and the rhythm, and the aspect of melody could show you where the pronunciation is becoming an issue and affecting all the rest of the stuff. Possible reason number 10, we're getting to it, guys. Possibly they don't see the forest from the trees. When you have a lot of things you're working on, you have to think of the notes, the rhythm, the energy, the text, the modulation, everything. Watching the conductor, listening to your peers. Sometimes there's so much work, they don't realize they're not actually singing the piece. They're performing it they're thinking too much of the details without getting the whole picture. That can be very often, actually, because especially when you're working so hard and working a lot on a certain piece, at a certain moment you just have to let it all go and just try to sing it from the beginning to the end. That is the best advice I could give you. Sometimes the tempo is not being recognized as something to think about, and to think about the tempo, you have to just go through the song, especially while preparing for the concert. At a certain moment, you have to start practicing it from the beginning to the end several times to gain stamina, to gain the right energy, to gain a bit of perspective, a right feel to it, to see the whole picture. That is a very important thing when it comes to tempo. Possible reason number 11, they are too into it. There are a lot of songs that become very emotional to a lot of people, especially when you're singing it. And when you start to get too emotional, a rational component of watching the conductor, being aware that you're singing in a choir, being aware that you have to stay in tempo, becomes a little bit more unnoticed because you're too into it and you lose yourself for a bit. I'm a big proponent of being able to lose yourself in the music. I do that all the time. But losing yourself in music doesn't mean losing the right perception of the tempo you're supposed to be in. That's the problem. When you notice that maybe this could be a problem, you don't have to tell them, get back into it. Just tell them, I know that this lyric in particular or this song is very meaningful to you. And I agree, it is to me too, but you have to keep it a little bit rational. Okay, so go into it, feel it the most you want to, but just look at me, okay? Don't lose contact with me, your choir conductor. Second to last, we'll get through it, I promise. It's a long list, but I hope it's helpful so far. They're maybe not in your tempo from the very beginning or in your tempo at all. Hear me out. You as the conductor, okay, you give the tempo and you give the correct tempo and the right signals. And they start singing and they're not in your tempo. They're in their tempo. Even though they were watching you and they were reacting to you. There is a very big difference between just watching a conductor give you the tempo and feeling the tempo your conductor is giving you. I keep telling to my choir, you have to let me guide you even from the very beginning of my conducting. Don't just watch me and then start without me, because it's not just about watching me as a conductor. You have to feel my language. So really take notice of the fact that maybe when you're giving the beginning tempo signal, they're not registering you at all. Maybe they're just not watching you at that very moment. And maybe they're watching you as a conductor, but they're not feeling you at all. And they don't even know what it means to figure out the tempo. That is very hard to hear because you're probably feeling, well, if I'm giving them the tempo, they're supposed to listen. Often, it's not about the lack of wanting to listen. It's about not realizing that you're not actually in the tempo. And it doesn't have to be just with your conducting. If one voice part is waiting for other voice parts to finish so they could latch on, they're waiting, they're not in their tempo. So when they arrive to their tempo, they have already, the previous voice parts while singing could have changed the tempo, the feeling of the tempo a little bit. So when the choir part that is coming next is entering the score, they could be in a different tempo because they were not feeling it. So it goes both ways. It goes choir conductor and choir in general, voice parts in general. And lucky number 13, the acoustics. I talk a lot about physics on this channel because I think it's very neglected. The fact that a sound is a wave and it reflects is often very neglected. But I've been singing more and I realized that maybe I'm out of tempo because I don't hear the other singers and I have to trust the choir conductor. And my choir conductor told me, you're not giving the best effort. You have to be in tempo. And I was like, I actually am giving my best effort, but I'm not able to hear that I'm out of tempo because at my point of view, at my place on the stage, I'm in tempo. But when you're listening it from the other part of the room, it comes out as a lack of tempo. So that is what a sound check is for, okay? Be respectful of your choir singers. If they keep telling you, I think I am in tempo, from the place where I'm standing, I think I'm in tempo, that is not necessarily an ego thing. That could just be a real situation. Take notice of the acoustics. Maybe that's the reason why the tempo is a bit... Okay, so if you're here still, thank you, and I am amazed. And I hope this has been helpful so far, so I will give you a bonus tip. Often people ask me how to give the correct tempo, how to feel the correct tempo as a choir conductor. For now, as a bonus tip, I can tell you, when you're coming to the stage, before coming to the stage, don't sing the beginning. Sing the 5 biggest most challenging parts in the score that are very different, very introspective, for example, and very rhythmic. Because if we're singing just the beginning without any real sense of what will be going on the third page, that could mean that you will take and give the wrong tempo. Giving the right tempo is something that takes a lot of experience and a lot of personal, intuition. And I think it's about going through a lot of recordings and being really real, what feels right. I think as you become older, your perception of what the correct tempo is becomes different. And that is it. That is the video. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being here for 3 years, because that's how long this channel has been up and running. Thank you for all the lovely comments. I have to say that it's really an honor to get your comments. I'm so happy to be here and to have this community. I'm looking forward to everything the year 2020 has to offer to all of us. I hope you're doing well. If you wish to talk to me, you can email me, you can find me on Facebook, and that would be it for the time being. Thank you for watching. Conduct well, conductors, and I'll see you next time. Bye!